Hello and welcome to Wisconsin in Focus, powered by the Center Square. I'm JD Davidson, Regional Editor for the Center Square. Joining me today is Ben Yount, Wisconsin contributor for the Center Square. Ben, how are things after the holidays?
So I've been using correspondent. Have I been using contributor? I think I do use contributor because I try and do. I write 2 stories a day, and one of them I say that I'm the correspondent, and the other I say I'm the contributor. So I don't know if you've noticed that I'm playing this little game, but now the cat's out of the bag.
Yeah, thanks, because I didn't notice, but and now I'm going to have to go check again. So that
find a third title. This will be the ever evolving. What do we call Ben this week? I like this game. This is a good game.
I think it should be contribuspondent.
We'll do it,
and then we'll do that.
There'll be some strategery to that decision.
Absolutely. We're recording this on Thursday, January 4th, 2024. Ben, let's talk immigration. It's opinions and issues that continue to boil over all over the country. But here in the Midwest, it doesn't seem to have the same bulkiness as a southern border state. But one small town Wisconsin police chief says the state isn't immune to immigration problems. Tell us a little bit about the letter Whitewater Police Chief Daniel Meyer sent President Biden.
The face of immigration in the Midwest is Chicago. And there have been national story after national story about the cost, the actual monetary cost that housing tens of thousands of people from all over Central and Southern America is applying to the city of Chicago. And here in Wisconsin, an hour north of Chicago, there has been a sort of, well, we don't have that problem here. But as we found out, we have similar problems. Whitewater is a small town, 15,000 people, as we say in the story. It's a college town, and it's known best for the university that if it didn't quite get into Madison, there's always Whitewater. And so it's got this sleepy small town charm. The police chief there set off a back and forth that 2 of the state's Republican congressmen jumped on when he wrote a letter just between Christmas and New Year's to President Biden saying, look, we've had about 1,000 people from Nicaragua and Venezuela mostly who've come to Wisconsin over the past 2 years. And he said they cannot continue with the cost. Said since early 2022, the city has seen a rapid increase in the population of immigrants arriving from Nicaragua and Venezuela. We estimate there are roughly 800 to 1,000 individuals who've arrived in that short time, the chief said in his letter. Said each individual has a different reason for coming here. Some are fleeing from a corrupt government. Others are simply looking for a better opportunity. Regardless of the individual situation, though, the chief said these people need resources like anyone else, and their arrival has put a great strain on our existing resources. Some of the spin in this is, of course, like with everything else that is immigration, political. And Republicans are pointing to this. Tom Tiffany, the Northwoods Congressman, Brian Stile, who is the congressman who I believe represents Whitewater, said, look, this is the cost of President Biden's immigration policies, that when you have hundreds of thousands of people crossing the border illegally every month, they have to go somewhere. And small towns like Whitewater are where they end up eventually. And it's an issue of cost for the chief. His letter ends with a request for money or grants or something because, a town of 15,000 people has enough police officers for a town of 15,000 people. They don't have enough police officers who are bilingual, who can deal with the situations that happen when you just sort of warehouse people. And so Whitewater, Wisconsin, as I think I put it on Twitter earlier this week, has now become the face of the immigration debate here in the state of Wisconsin.
I lived in Georgia and Alabama and Texas, and immigration, and this was 20 years ago, and immigration was still a big issue there. But it's those hidden costs that people don't understand. So when I was in Alabama, immigrants would come in, work at chicken plants. They would all go to school. My daughter went to an elementary school that 60% of the people who attended there, English was their second language. So now the expense doesn't just go to police. It's going to go to children of these immigrants that you can't turn them away from school, that have to go to school and can't speak English, with most likely teachers in Whitewater who probably don't have a Spanish speaking background. So you're going to have to find ways to communicate with those students, and all of that costs more money.
You're going to have to accommodate when these people show up at the emergency room, when they go to the public health department for something as simple as a vaccination update. When someone goes to jail, you're going to need to have an officer who speaks Spanish. You're going to need to have a jailer who speaks Spanish. You're going to need to have a public defender who speaks Spanish. You're going to need to have somebody in the courtroom who can translate. And no, you're exactly right that those are the sort of exponential costs that, regardless of where you are on welcoming people to communities or keeping people out, a flood of people means a whole change in a community. And we talked about, before Christmas, we talked about a new law in Wisconsin that allows for baby boxes. And this is one of these common sense, good Samaritan sort of laws that came about because of a death of a baby in Whitewater. And the chief referenced that, and it looks as though the baby that died may have died because parents who are immigrants from Nicaragua or Venezuela left the baby out in a field. And that's the sort of thing that now you have a human face with that law. And that's an aspect of immigration that no one was talking about. And so this is really getting a lot of attention because it's not just Republican, Democrat, Trump, Biden, close the border, welcome immigrants. This is a rather in-depth conversation, and it doesn't look like there's an easy solution. Congressman Brian Stile, who we quoted in the piece, spent his day on Tuesday at the southern border, and he said, based on what he saw there and what he saw in Whitewater, something's got to change. But, you know, if solving immigration was easy, Congress would have done it years ago. Congress, just like state legislatures, they're really good at taking care of the low-hanging fruit. But the hard stuff, it's more difficult. And so Whitewater is going to sit because, you know, this is a letter that was written to the White House. And I don't know that anyone is expecting that President Biden is going to write the chief back. Certainly don't know that he's going to write him back with a check included.
It's one thing for Chicago and New York or El Paso or Denver to have immigration issues. I live in a town of 15,000, and it's unfortunate that it has to be political, but everything is political. But this is one of those issues where people need to get together, find some sort of compromise. Without the compromise, there can't be a solution. And there are ideas on both sides that legitimately need to be heard, but it needs to get fixed. And I feel like we could spend the next 10 years on podcasts talking about that.
The reality is there's an election in November. And almost nothing gets done in election years, neither at the federal or state level. And so, yeah, Whitewater's police chief is concerned here at the beginning of 2024 about the cost of dealing with the flood of immigrants to his community. I promise you that I'm willing to bet that if we revisit this story come the beginning of January 2025, he probably still will have some of the same complaints and may have more people to be dealing with.
We need to do that. We need to go back a year from now and see. But right now, that's all the time we have. Listeners can keep up with this story and more at thecentersquare.com. For Ben Yount, I'm J.D. Davidson. Thanks for listening, and please subscribe.
Knowledge is power, and you deserve to know what happens in your state government. That's why the Center Square's reporting zeroes in on state authorities publishing stories that show where your money goes and who spends it. The Center Square gives power to the taxpayer by tracking politicians' use of the people's money and demanding transparency from state-run agencies. This is how the Center Square equips you, the American taxpayer, to hold your state government accountable. Sign up now for your state's Center Square newsletter at thecentersquare.com.